But I think first things first, we'll start off with me. And I want to talk a little bit about Zoom, right? So Zoom came out last week, informing us about its, earnings call, et cetera, et cetera. One thing led to another. Even though they've passed sort of the expectations, the stock dropped, right? Something like 15 billion was wiped out in terms of market value after the earnings call. And it's a sign, I guess, right? If you read the news, so on and so forth, they mentioned that the pandemic growth is waning. I believe the CFO actually mentioned that this could be sort of the post COVID era where people are sort of going out and about again and carrying on their usual work. And we've seen that drop. Now, again, right, if you have any comments on this sort of things, please go ahead, type it into our comment section. We're more than happy to ask any questions and or any statements that you have. I'd love to show that to the rest of our listeners as well. Reggie, what do you think about Zoom and all of them, even given that they've been posting record revenues?
I mean, Zoom is one of those pandemic babies, right? They really grew because of the pandemic, and as with all other tech softwares, they take time to be acquired, as in they take time to acquire customers, right? But because of the whole pandemic lockdown, Zoom just had its crazy boom. Like every quarter, I was seeing numbers just flying off the roof. I was like, what the hell is this? Is this gonna keep up, and is it gonna keep going? And of course, you see share price kind of inflate along as with any other massive growth story. But it is not unexpected, I think, for Zoom to have a pullback, also because of reality setting in that, okay, maybe after pandemic, there'll be a lesser amount of people using Zoom. But as with any other tech adoption, it's a cycle, right? So it tends to kind of plateau off. There will be a retention number that sticks around. So there will be some people that continue to use it, and then there'll be some people that kind of wane out from the service. So I don't think that is very unfounded. I don't think that's very special per se. It's not unexpected for Zoom to have that kind of retraction from its growth, right? But does that mean it's a buy? Does that mean it's a story to continue to chug along? That's a whole different story, a different evaluation structure that we have to go into. Yes.
Nice. Thanks for that. CS, what do you think?
Yeah, so I personally hate using Zoom, right? So I don't actually know why people like it. And honestly, for those who don't know, I'm usually I'm one of the co-founders of the Financial Coconut here, and I spend a lot of time doing a lot of sales calls, right? And no one ever uses Zoom in Singapore, right? So I guess what I'm curious about with Zoom right now, and granted, I haven't spent much time looking into this, is Zoom really just a North American thing, right? When I go into conversations with a lot of these banks, insurance companies, what have you, a lot of them are using Teams, like Microsoft Teams. They already have they're already entrenched in it. They can't get out of it. Which to me, it makes sense, right? When I looked at some of the Zoom stats they based it off companies that are above $100,000, which isn't very high if you're talking about trying to get into the Fortune 500 or what have you, right? So that said, I don't know if they are kind of tapping out with the current market that they can kind of reach, and they essentially pulled forward a bunch of years of potential customers, and now they need to figure out how do they actually tap into the real enterprise.
Yeah, but I think what is important to note that a lot of these big enterprises, yes, they use Microsoft, they use Teams, so they're entrenched in the Microsoft ecosystem, right? So that's the power of Microsoft, right? A lot of these tech sales, enterprise sales people can really get the whole package, right? End-to-end service with Microsoft and with Google, when a lot of these big guys, big providers, Amazon as well, right? Adobe, whatever you. So a lot of big enterprise software ecosystem. Microsoft is definitely a leader, and that's why I also hate Teams, by the way. The UI of Teams is super irritating. Yes, Google Meets. I'm a Google Meet fan. Okay, so but that's product, right? From a business standpoint, it's a little bit different. People are using Teams, so it is what it is. But when we're looking back at Zoom, I think something to note is that Zoom has opened up its developer ecosystem, so that's a cool part about Zoom, right? As with Square, as with Spotify, as with Shopify, a lot of these younger, newer companies that are trying to go for that fast growth tech play in the US, they all have some sort of in-app extra marketplace, right? So they have that marketplace for all your developers, third-party developers to come in to create additional stuff, additional skin, additional features on top of their ecosystem. And Zoom has definitely gotten a lot of new, younger developers that are building third-party additional stuff, right? Where you can create rooms, you can have splits, you can have skins, you can schedule, you can connect the API to the back end of something else. There are many things that Zoom has created, right? Not just what Teams can do and not just what Meets can do, which is very restrictive, right? And I think that's the part that Zoom may have an edge, right? Just because they are developing more and faster.
Got it. Yeah, no, I think that's a good point, right? They're effectively creating their own ecosystem, given the fact that Microsoft already have their own, right? And the best way to do that is APIs with other software, other third-party software, as much as possible. I think just some numbers for our listeners, right? So it was 347 last week, and within a day it dropped to 289. And that was the big sell-off, I guess, if you will, right? Tumbled about 17 to 20%. And on that note, Kathy Wood, we all know the famous Kathy Wood, we talked about her last week, snapped up 200,000 shares of Zoom that day, right? So I think it's good to note, right, if for those that are believing in Kathy Wood, this is what she did. And effectively towards the ARKK and the ARKW fund that she runs. And she believes that it's underpriced now, right? Now, whether that's true or not, that's not for us to say. That's for you guys to do your own research. But I think that's pretty decent that she feels that it's going to go up. What do you guys think?
I mean, it's just Kathy Wood being Kathy Wood. she is the diamond hand of all these growth stocks, right? Holding the fort and buying it, whenever dips are coming down. So I am actually very critical about her investment strategy because she's actually very active. She's not as passive as what she tries to market, the long-term hold and all that. So she has a lot of trades. If you look at how she manages ARK and the in and outs of ARK, a lot of liquidity going in and out of the company, and a lot of liquidity going in and out of the different companies that they hold. Right. So I won't be surprised if this is just a short-term kind of play from them. But yeah, she is a famous contrarian. So I don't know, man. Yeah, she is what it is.